you know, Sfiso was talking about the state-owned enterprises, and I think that Eskom's debt is something like 400 billion rand. I mean, it's absolutely eye-watering. The minister wasn't exactly clear on how many more bailouts are going to come through, and I think that it's a very difficult issue to get right, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's a big omission, because I think that if you listen to the last two ministers of finance, they managed to come and say something about the SOEs. The Minister of Finance, when it was Pravin Gordhan, instead of talking about the bailout extent that you are asking, he said, no, we're going to have a partner, a private equity partner, and so on. That took 4 years before that could happen, right? So it means it was made as an excuse to say, don't worry, there won't be any bailouts. We're shifting the responsibility to the private sector. And it didn't happen for another 4 years. And when it happens, they go and they leave out people like Emirates Airlines and so on, who in fact have the oil, the fuel, the resources, the networks, and they take some obscure BEE partner from South Africa to now be that partner. Now we're going to sit with another problem soon. 3 budget speeches ago, or 4 budget speeches ago, we talked about money being specifically set aside for Eskom. I think it was about 20-something billion. Now they're not talking about it now, because we need to know how far are we in reducing that debt burden. How will you know, the distribution, or rather the unbundling help deal with that debt? And
we're not just, you know, you're not just trying to balance the budget and please many different local interests. It is, of course, about pleasing the international community, because we are being watched and we want to attract that investment. But something, Shahan, that's going to touch many pockets. These excise taxes. Tell us more.
Definitely. Lucky Ntimane can join us now. Lucky, this connection is not stable, and I'm very eager to ask you about this because it affects us all, might I add. So nobody can be righteous about this. So this is it, right? 11 cents more for a can of beer and 7 cents more for a bottle of wine. We know that this industry said you simply couldn't afford an increase in excise duties. So what impact is it really going to have? Are we going to see people have to cut jobs because of this increase?
Thank you, Shahan, and greetings to your guest, the panel. Look, Shahan, the increase is not going to affect the alcohol industry in terms of jobs. No one's going to lose their jobs for a simple reason that liquor manufacturers building their pricing on inflation. And we welcome that the announcement by the Minister of Finance, the numbers are within the inflation rate. So there shouldn't be any issues whatsoever going forward in terms of people losing their job. If any manufacturer insists on people losing their jobs as a result of this announcement, that would be an excuse that should be condemned.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I know that this industry has raised concerns about this particular issue, and the minister has done it. He has increased the sin tax, right? So what was the fuss about then? Because that's what I'm struggling to understand, given what you're telling me now.
I think the fuss is about the sustainability of the industry. Because if you look at last year, the excess duty was about 8%, and now beer and cider, for example, came in at about 5.5%. So it's almost a reprieve of about 2.5%, give or take. So the industry has factored in the excise being at inflation. Hence, we are saying that there shouldn't really be an issue. However, the challenge sits on the tavern sector, which is the constituency that we represent. Because what you get there, Shahan, is that you are going to get profitability being eroded as a result of the price that we have to take, the price increase that we have to take. And if you look at the illicit market, which has grown to about 20 billion rand a year, it means us as taverns now we have to compete with the unscrupulous dealers in our township space who will sell alcohol at a less price because they are getting it through backdoor channels. And we have seen, you know, a rise in number of robberies that are taking place in taverns where, you know, these dealers are now stealing alcohol directly from our taverns so that they can feed into their illicit channels. We are worried about that. Hence our call to the minister for a 0% excise so that we can stabilize, you know, the market and ensure that we're able to root out the illicit trade of alcohol, which has really taken hold in our township.
All right, thank you so much for your insight. We're going to leave it right there. Lucky Ntimane is from the National Liquor Traders Association.
So from beer and budgets, let's move to politics. And it's been a really interesting week in terms of what's been happening. We've seen Ace Magashule trying to get all those charges against him dismissed in the Free State. We've seen Thabo Mbeki in the Free State trying to unify party structures. A very divided province is the Free State. what are your thoughts on what's going on within the ANC? Because it's such an important year, and it's so clear how divided the party is at this point.
Yeah. Look, I think in a sense there's nothing new that's happening. Every time you have an election coming up within the ruling party, there'll always be these tensions, there'll be divisions will deepen because people have to pick a side. Right? It's not like after the conference where you say, oh, let's unite, let's be one. Right now, it's not about that. It's about fighting for the soul of the ANC. You see that Thabo Mbeki, or the former president, has been doled out to go and try and unite party structures, but it's an uphill battle because people have to choose somebody.
Yeah.
In December, they have to either say Ramaphosa must continue or they must come up with someone else. Now, my own information is that the RT forces are scattered right now. They're not sure what on earth should happen. Lindiwe Sisulu's attempt to be some kind of a candidate was not even fully lobbied within the RT forces. She may be used as a last resort because if the case of Ismail is still continuing until December, he can't stand. He's been told to step aside to clear his name first. It's unlikely to happen before December, so they'll need to find another candidate who can contest. And of course, we've heard that Paul Mashatile may be eyeing the post.
Yeah.
Zweli Mkhize, of all people, may also be eyeing the post. That's why he's spending time in court to try and shut down the report of the SIU so that in December it doesn't matter. And it's easy for it not to matter. If
could he make a comeback, I suppose, is the question.
It's the only way to keep out of prison.
So listen, so much to talk about, but you've got a fascinating guest tonight. Tell us why you invited him and what's the one question you're looking forward to asking him?
No, well, it's Dalim Pofu, you know, it's called the people's advocate. So obviously I'm interested in how he picks his cases. He seems to be taking a lot of controversial cases. But I want to talk to him about the state of the judiciary. Emerging out of the JSC process, there was a lot of noise. Adrian Basson wrote a very scathing piece that this guy is not representative of the judicial. So I'm giving him a chance to respond to that. I've invited Adrian, who refused. He says he has said whatever he wants to say in his column. So basically following the JSC ruckus, we want to hear what his views are going to be.
8 o'clock tonight, JJ Tabane, Dalim Pofu. That's going to be fun and games. Thanks so much for chatting to us this evening, JJ.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Shahan.
All right, let's move on to other news now. Desperate and out of options. This is why 76 workers say they have no other choice but to camp outside the Edenvale Hospital.